They say every place has its rules, but what if breaking them meant death? In a snow-buried town forgotten by maps, silence hides secrets older than memory. Deep in the woods, a prison waits, one run by faceless guards, where dead children rise. Again, 2 places, 2 rule sets, follow them or vanish. You wanted a true horror story, you're about to get 2. Now, let's begin. Story 1. North Frost, the prison that shouldn't exist. I've been in and out of jails and prisons since I was 17. At some point, you stop counting. Gang wars, stabbings, food riots, guards being dragged into broom closets and beaten. With mop handles, I've seen it all. But nothing stuck with me quite like that last transfer. Nothing else ever felt like being dragged out of the real world and shoved into a nightmare with rules that didn't belong in any system designed by man. It started on a rainy Tuesday. The air inside Springfield Correctional was as stale as always, thick with the scent of bleach, mildew, and desperation. I was lying on my thin cot, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, shaped like a screaming face, or maybe that was just how I'd started to see it, when the shout came. "Kerr! Elias Kerr, 4311! I jerked up. The metal springs beneath me screeched and the cold bit into my bare feet as they hit the floor. I shuffled to the cell bars and looked out. Officer Brody Hale stood in front of my cell, clipboard in hand, and sweat already clinging to his forehead despite the morning chill. He was a mountain of flesh stuffed into a standard-issue uniform with triple chins and a waddling gait. But don't let that fool you. Hale had survived 2 riots by sheer luck and a mean right hook when pushed. "What's up?" I asked, squinting. "You're being transferred," Hale said, not looking up. "Pack your shit, bus leaves in 30. My heart sank. Most inmates dream of transfers. New food, new faces, maybe a lesser hell. But Springfield was predictable. I knew which guards to avoid, which inmates had shanks, which ones just liked to talk. In a twisted way, I had carved out a routine. Getting transferred meant starting from scratch, and that terrified me more than it should have. I shoved my meager belongings into a clear plastic bag. 1 Bible, a toothbrush, a half-used deodorant, stick, a radio with dying batteries, sandals, 2 pairs of socks, and the same orange jumpsuit I'd worn for nearly 2 years. The bag felt like nothing in my hands, just like me, I guess. Nothing left, just weightless skin and bone doing time for a life that had gone off the rails long ago. "Where am I going?" I asked, as Hale led me down the corridor. The other inmates barely glanced up. Just another fish getting thrown into another barrel. Hale gave a strange shrug, like he didn't know or didn't care. "New facility, private contract, experimental program, whatever the hell that means." Experimental. The word lodged in my chest like a splinter. What kind of experiment? No clue, just got the orders this morning. You and 1 other guy. We passed the rec yard, empty because of the rain, and walked out to the loading dock. The prison bus idled there, steam curling from its exhaust. A large white van with no logos sat next to it, blacked-out windows gleaming with rain. Something about that van made my stomach twist. It looked more like a mortuary vehicle than a prison transport. The only other prisoner already on board was a tall, dark-skinned man with a shaved head and heavy-set eyes. He looked up as I climbed the steps, nodding slightly. "Darnell Reese," he said. 34218. "Elias Kerr," I replied, settling into the seat across from him. Hale climbed in after me and sat in the middle row, groaning as the bus groaned under his weight. The cuffs on our wrists and ankles jingled with every bump in the road. A long chain ran from our ankles to the steel bolted to the floor. As we pulled away from Springfield, I looked out the small grated window one last time. Rain pelted the glass. The place looked grim even from the outside, brick walls stained with time and failure. But it was home, kind of. We rode in silence for nearly an hour before anyone spoke. You ever hear of North Frost? Darnell asked, glancing sideways at me. I shook my head. Is that where we're going? He didn't answer, just stared ahead, brows furrowed. Hale popped open a bottle of Coke and slurped loudly. I've only heard rumors, he said, voice low. Supposed to be a new model prison. Private funding. Rehabilitation mixed with behavior science. They don't take lifers or gang enforcers, just certain profiles. What profiles? I asked. The kind who've been through multiple systems. Career inmates, smart, detached survivors. He smiled without humor. Like you. I didn't respond. Outside, the woods thickened. Civilization thinned to nothing. No houses, no cars, not even power lines. Just pine trees that leaned over the road like silent watchers. You believe in haunted places? Darnell asked out of nowhere. I stared at him. What do you mean? Places where things stay, where pain gets soaked into the walls, where the ground remembers. I didn't answer. But as the van turned off the main highway onto a narrower road that snaked deep into the forest, I did start to wonder. There was a rusted sign near the edge of the tree line. Most of the letters were gone, but I caught a glimpse of faded white paint. Property of... and a string of numbers beneath it. That was the first time I felt it. Something in my chest tightened like a sixth sense, warning me to run. Of course, it was too late for that. We drove deeper. The forest thickened until it became a tunnel of green-black. The road was barely wide enough for the van, and the trees leaned so close that their branches scraped along the windows like fingernails. The only sound was the groan of the engine, and the occasional hiss of gravel under the tires. Then, without warning, we stopped. What now? I muttered. Officer Hale grunted and looked out the front window. Gate, probably. Don't see it, though. That's when I heard it. A low mechanical rumble ahead, followed by the heavy clang of steel. A set of floodlights flickered to life in the trees, casting the entire area in a strange, sterile white. Then the van crept forward again, passing, under what looked like a massive gate built into the rock itself. We were entering a facility carved directly into the mountainside. It didn't look like any prison I'd ever seen. No guard towers, no barbed wire. Just smooth concrete walls and a wide metal garage door, now slowly yawning open. Inside, darkness swallowed the van. The fluorescent light from outside cut off as the garage door rolled shut behind us, sealing us in. Welcome to North Frost, Hale muttered. The air inside was ice-cold and stale. The van's engine cut off. For a moment, none of us moved. I peered through the grated window behind me and saw only vague shapes, shadows that didn't quite look like equipment. They looked older, angular, almost medieval. All right, Hale said, pulling out his keys. Let's get this over with. We were still cuffed at the wrists and ankles, chained together like livestock. He heaved himself up and shuffled around to the side door, opening it with a groan. Cold air rushed in, carrying the faintest whiff of rust, not blood. Older than that. Like time had bled in here instead. We stepped out, chains clinking with every move. My eyes adjusted slowly, but I could already make out the hulking silhouettes of something. Tables. No, torture devices. One was a twisted iron frame with belts and rollers. Another looked like a metal coffin lined with spikes. And resting on a dusty shelf was something I recognized from a book. A Pear of Anguish, its 3 razor prongs gleaming faintly in the flashlight beam. What the hell is this place? Darnell whispered. Don't ask me, Hale muttered, suddenly pale. I've never seen this before. His light landed on a door at the far side of the garage. It was made of black wood, cracked and aged, with silver filigree in the shape, of twisted vines and runes I couldn't read. Across the top, a faded inscription read, North Frost Penitentiary, all time belongs here. Next to the door bolted to the concrete wall was a large faded sign made of etched glass. Rules for personal conduct. North Frost Penitentiary. Memorize them. Obey them. Survive. Do not speak to the guards without faces. They do not work. Here. They are not human. When the red emergency lights turn on, hide. Do not run. Do not speak. Do not breathe loudly. Do not enter the medical ward under any circumstances, no matter what you hear. Never sleep between 2 and 4 a.m., even if the lights go out, especially then. If someone knocks on your door and you didn't see them approach, do not answer. I read the rules twice. I didn't want to. My eyes just couldn't look away. The words felt wrong, like they had been written for another world. A different version of reality. Some kind of sick joke? Darnell asked, staring at the sign. I don't think so, I said. Feels too serious. Before Hale could comment, a sharp buzz echoed from a hidden speaker overhead. Then a voice. Crackled to life. Female, monotone, calm like a robot reading bedtime stories. Please remove their restraints. Proceed to intake corridor. Hale flinched. That's my cue, I guess. He fumbled with the keys, trying not to look at the twisted objects in the corners. His hands shook slightly as he undid our cuffs. Once the chains dropped, I rubbed my wrists, trying to get feeling back. Brody, I said, you're not staying. Are you? He hesitated. Orders said drop off only. I don't like this place either, Kerr, trust me. The black wooden door creaked open with a gust of warm, sour air. Beyond it lay a narrow hallway bathed in crimson light. Shadows flickered across the walls from no apparent source. I picked up my plastic bag of belongings and stepped forward. Darnell followed, slow and silent. Behind us, Hale called out weakly, "Good luck, boys, watch the rules." Then the door slammed shut. The hallway was long, lined with black tiles and steel pipes along the ceiling. A camera tracked us silently, its lens moving like a blinking eye. I spotted one of the buttons labeled Emergency Dispatch, embedded in the wall beneath a red strobe. Great, Darnell muttered. Feels like we're in a damn meat locker. At the end of the hall was a fork, left and right with arrows, etched into the floor. I guess this is general population, I said, though no signs told us so. Just then I noticed something. A faint ticking sound, like a clock somewhere deep in the facility, ticking faster than it should. Then it stopped, and everything felt still, too still. A low vibration passed through the floor. Darnell and I looked at each other. That didn't feel like a boiler, he said. Nope. Something deep inside my gut told me we had already made a mistake. Not by coming here. We had no choice. But by assuming this place followed any rules we knew, this place had its own laws. We took the left fork. There was no particular reason, just instinct, if that's what you could call the blind decision-making of two convicts walking through hell's reception area. The hallway stretched far ahead, dimly lit by flickering red, fixtures embedded in the ceiling. They buzzed like dying insects. A fine layer of dust clung to every surface, and the floor tiles looked slick with age. For a place supposedly brand new, North Frost felt like it had been buried for centuries. About 30 feet down, we saw it, our first choice, a door marked Dormitory 3A. The metal was warped, as if something had slammed into it hard, and recently, just past it. Storage. Then medical ward. My stomach clenched. I remembered the third rule on the wall. Do not enter the medical ward under any circumstances. A laughable warning. Maybe, until the emergency light snapped off above us. Then everything went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence that buzzes in your ears and makes your own breathing feel intrusive. The fluorescent lights that replaced the red glow strobed rapidly, like a strobe light at a rave for corpses. Then the red lights came on again, brighter now, pulsing, urgent. Darnell froze beside me. The lights, he whispered. What was... The rule, hide, that was it, the second rule. But there was nowhere to hide. The hallway had no alcoves, no furniture, no open doors, just flat black walls and these cold steel door frames, all locked. Then came the scream. It echoed from somewhere up ahead, high-pitched, ragged, like someone screaming through shredded vocal cords. It pierced through me, made the hairs on my neck stand. A second later, a wet, gurgling noise followed, like a man drowning in his own blood. We both stepped back. Darnell turned to run, but the hallway behind us had changed. The door we came through was gone, literally replaced by a blank stretch of wall, smooth and seamless. What the hell? I muttered. Another scream, closer now. Then a thump, a wet sound. Like a body hitting the floor, then we saw it. A figure emerged at the far end of the hallway. It moved in quick, jerky lurches, like it was struggling against gravity or its own bones. At first I thought it was a large man crawling, but then I saw the claws, black and curved like sickles. The limbs were too long, the joints bending at impossible angles. It scuttled low to the ground like a spider. Its skin gleamed slick and dark like the carapace of a centipede. From the strobing light I caught flashes of a hunched back, exposed ribs, a snake-like neck, and then its face, or what should have been a face. It had no eyes, only two bone-white sockets filled with milky fluid. A vertical mouth split its head, in two stretching down below its chest. As it opened that maw, I saw row upon row of fangs, some broken, some jagged, all stained in dried black. It didn't roar. It hissed, wet and sharp, like steam escaping a punctured pipe. "Go!" I screamed, yanking Darnell's arm. We bolted. The creature shrieked and lunged, its limbs slamming against the walls as it bounded forward. I could hear it scraping behind us, claws dragging sparks off the metal. The sound alone made my legs pump faster. The doors to Dormitory 3A and storage were locked tight. That left only one option. The last door in the hall, medical. Ward, I didn't think. I didn't remember the rule, I just knew we were going to die if we stayed in the open. I slammed into the door. It opened with a creaking groan that echoed like a scream. We fell into darkness. I hit the floor, hard. The bag of my belongings went flying. Darnell landed next to me, groaning, already bleeding from somewhere along his back. The door slammed shut behind us. "Get up," I whispered. Darnell was on his hands and knees, gasping. It clawed me. Man, I felt it. I think it sliced right through my damn jumpsuit. I helped him up, panting. My own heart slammed against my ribs like it wanted out. We were in a hallway, smaller than the main corridor, lined with tile and fluorescent lights that flickered overhead. Ahead, I saw rows of medical beds, old IV poles, rusted stretchers, and silence. The creature hadn't followed us, at least not yet. I looked back at the door. No handle, no lock. Just a flat steel slab now. "Of course," I muttered. "Trapped." "You saw that thing?" Darnell asked, still holding his side. I nodded. "What the hell was it? Not human. No shit." We crept forward, following the hallway deeper into the medical ward. The smell of antiseptic lingered, but underneath it was something fouler, sweet, rotting, chemical. We reached the main chamber, a large infirmary-style room with 15 beds, half of them overturned. Bloody handprints smeared the walls. A medical cart was tipped on its side near the far wall, and its contents were scattered. Bandages, scalpels, syringes. A locked glass cabinet glinted in the back. Inside I saw clean gauze, antiseptic bottles, hand gloves. "We can patch you up," I said. "If nothing else, this place has a first aid kit." Maybe this was the right call after all, Darnell muttered, grimacing. Screw those rules. But then something moved, not in front of us, not behind, below. From underneath one of the beds came a low, rasping giggle. We froze. Another giggle joined it, then another. A hand reached out, small, pale, mangled, with blackened fingernails and deep stitching along the wrist. Then another hand, then a third. Children, dead children. They crawled from under the beds, limbs twisted, eyes missing, mouths sewn shut or gaping wide with broken teeth. Some dragged scalpels behind them. One had a syringe stuck in her own neck. Their gowns were torn and soaked in dark, crusted blood. Their heads twitched and they giggled, high-pitched, stuttering sounds like a skipping record. Darnell staggered back. No, 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 no. Then they lunged. They came like spiders from hell. One after another, the children emerged from beneath the beds, limping, twitching, dragging blades across the tile. Their mouths were frozen in grins, far too wide for their faces, stitched in place with crude, black thread that pulled their skin taut. One boy had no lower jaw, only a hanging tongue that slapped against his neck. Another girl's hospital gown was soaked in blood and bore a childlike pattern of teddy bears and hearts, except hers had been painted over in what looked like smeared feces and dried organs. "Elias!" Darnell shouted behind me, stumbling back. The children charged, and I didn't think, I just moved. I grabbed the first aid tray on the medical cart and hurled it at the nearest one. A pair of scissors and a bottle of alcohol clattered to the ground. One of the children shrieked, not in pain but laughter, like it was playing. One of them jumped. I turned just in time to catch a flash of silver, a scalpel slicing across my palm. I screamed as cold fire shot up my arm. Blood sprayed across the tiles. Darnell tackled the attacker, slamming the childlike thing into the bedpost. But there were too many. At least 8 now, maybe more, crawling from crevices in the wall, vents under locked cabinets. They surrounded us in a tightening ring of rotted flesh, gleaming blades and vacant eyes. My breath caught. I glanced toward the medicine cabinet, still locked. No choice. I reached into my plastic bag and pulled out the radio. I smashed it against the floor once, twice, until the speaker cracked open and I had enough of a shard to jam into the cabinet's latch. With shaking, bloody fingers, I pried at the lock. "Come on," I whispered. "Come on, damn it." Behind me, Darnell screamed. I turned and saw 2 of them on his back, biting through the fabric of his jumpsuit, clawing at his spine. His blood ran in rivulets down his legs. I got the cabinet open, grabbing gauze and rubbing. Alcohol. I spun around just in time to see a pale hand reach for my throat. I stabbed downward with a syringe I had grabbed, pure reflex. The child girl shrieked, then smiled at me, even as thick black liquid oozed from her mouth and onto my wrist. "What the hell are you things?" I muttered. She giggled. Her mouth opened wider than it should have, jaw dislocating with a pop, and revealed rows of teeth like broken glass. Then she lunged again. The lights in the room went out. Complete darkness swallowed us. We were blind. Disoriented. I could only hear the whisper of bare feet against the floor, the high-pitched giggling, the desperate choking sound coming from Darnell as he fought them off. Then the red lights snapped back on. Emergency lights. Bright. Pulsing. And now I remembered the second rule again. When the red emergency lights turn on, hide. Too late. The room was a massacre. Darnell was slumped against the wall, blood pouring from gashes all over his back and arms. His jumpsuit was shredded. He looked up at me, dazed. "Elias, they're laughing, even when you kill them. They laugh." I dropped beside him, pressing gauze to the deepest wound on his side. "We're not dying in this room," I hissed. Then I heard them again, more hands reaching out from under the beds. Small, sharp, hungry. A knife stabbed into my thigh. I screamed, falling to one knee. A boy's face appeared, skin decayed, one eye hanging by a thread of flesh, the other a black socket. His grin stretched from ear to ear. I yanked the blade from my leg and shoved it into the thing's chest. It didn't scream. It smiled wider, and then, bang! A gunshot exploded in the room, deafening. The head of one of the children popped like a melon, sending black fluid and bone fragments into the air. Another shot, then another. The doorway burst open. Officer Hale stood there, pale, sweat-drenched, pistol in hand. His chest rose and fell like a piston, and his face had none of the slacker's calm he wore earlier. "Get up," he screamed. "Get your asses up and move." I grabbed Darnell under the arms. Together we limped toward Hale as he kept firing, picking off the twisted children one by one. The bullets blew holes in their small bodies, but even in death, their expressions never changed. Always smiling. Hale grabbed my other arm, dragging both of us into the hallway. Behind us, the children screeched like dying bats. The door slammed shut. We collapsed in the red-lit corridor. Why'd you come back?" I gasped. Hale's eyes darted wild. "Driver was dead, throat ripped out, nobody else out there, just silence. I had to see if you guys were still alive." "Not for long if we stay here," Darnell muttered, barely conscious. I could still hear them behind. The door scratching, laughing, tapping. We had broken the rule, entered the forbidden ward, and now we'd seen what they tried to hide. The hallway outside the medical ward pulsed with the red emergency lights, bathing everything in that unnatural arterial glow. Our breaths fogged in the cold air, and the walls seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. Darnell leaned on me heavily, limping with every step. Blood soaked the back of his jumpsuit, and one arm hung uselessly at his side. Hale kept glancing back over his shoulder, his pistol still raised, lips moving in silent curses. "We can't stay in one place," Hale said through clenched teeth. "They don't patrol like normal guards. They listen. They smell blood." "They?" I asked. Hale didn't answer. We kept moving. The corridor twisted, turned, split. There were no maps, no signs, just dead ends, strange intersections, and the occasional flickering bulb. At one point, we passed a hallway lined with sealed glass. Chambers. Inside one, I saw a man hanging upside down, desiccated like jerky, his skin clinging to bone. Another chamber held a still writhing figure with no limbs, only its eyes darting wildly as it mouthed something wordless. We didn't stop. Eventually, we reached a wide corridor that looked more normal than the others. Tile floor, fluorescent, lighting a water fountain built into the wall. Across from the fountain, beneath a flashing red strobe, was one of the emergency dispatch panels. "There," I said. "That button. We need help." Hale hesitated. "We don't know who responds." "To it, we don't know anything," I snapped. "Right now I'd take a SWAT team or a damn exorcist." I reached out and hit the button. It let out a long, drawn-out buzz. A moment later, a red light on the panel lit up. Then, nothing. Silence. I turned to the others. "Maybe it worked. Halt!" A voice thundered behind us. I spun around. A man in a black correctional officer's uniform was walking toward us from the far end of the hallway. His steps were even, deliberate. One hand rested on the radio strapped to his chest. The other hovered near the pistol at his hip. Something felt off immediately. His walk was too smooth, too exact. His posture didn't shift as he moved, almost like a machine imitating human motion. Then he stepped under the emergency light and I saw his face, or rather the lack of one. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just smooth pale skin stretching across the front of his skull like a mannequin dipped in wax. "You must report to the medical ward," the faceless guard said. The voice didn't come from his body. It came from everywhere. The walls, the floor, the ceiling. Like it had been pre-recorded and played back through the facility itself. "Nope," Hale said quickly, trying to sound casual. "We just got out of there. Everything's fine. Look, I work here." He held up his ID badge. The guard didn't respond. Instead, he lifted his radio and said, Resistance near Corridor 12. Dispatching compliance protocol. I didn't. Wait. I stepped forward, slapped the radio out of his hand, and tried to grab his pistol. He moved like lightning, faster than any human I'd seen. He slammed a fist into my chest, sending me sprawling into the wall. Hale shouted and opened fire. The tapped. First shot caught the faceless thing in the shoulder. It staggered back but didn't flinch, no blood, no cry. Just adjusted its stance and raised its own weapon. The shot hit Hale in the gut. He folded like a dropped marionette, blood blooming across his uniform. "No!" I shouted. Darnell, somehow still on his feet, charged with a roar, clutching something, a glinting in his hand, one of the scalpels from the medical ward. He tackled the faceless CO, stabbing it in the throat. There was no scream, only a strange static crackling as the blade sank in. The two collapsed in a heap. The guard's gun went off, firing into the ceiling. The walls echoed with the crack of it. I crawled to Hale's side. His eyes were wide, blood spilling from his mouth. "Get out," he whispered. "Don't let this place eat you too." Then his head slumped back. Gone. I turned toward Darnell. He was still breathing, barely. He'd killed the guard or disabled it. The thing twitched beneath him, limbs spasming, black sludge oozing from the wound. "Guns," I said hoarsely. "Get the guns." We scavenged both pistols and spare mags. The emergency dispatch light on the wall was still glowing red. Somewhere, far off, I heard more footsteps. Multiple. Then came the gunfire. Automatic weapons. Heavy. Close. We ducked behind a corner just as a group of men in black tactical gear swept past, like military but unmarked. Their helmets had no visors and they didn't speak, just fired into side corridors with ruthless precision. I saw one unload a full clip into another faceless guard. The body dropped and twitched violently before dissolving into ash. "Are they here to help?" Darnell asked, dazed. "I don't think they care who lives," I replied. We kept moving, avoiding both monsters and soldiers. Along the way, we passed cells with mummified corpses hanging from meat hooks. A dormitory where inmates had been torn apart. Organs spilled like spaghetti across the floor. A chapel filled with bodies kneeling in prayer, each with a bullet hole in the back of the skull. Eventually, we found a door marked "Security Exit, Authorized Personnel Only." I tried the handle, locked, but Hale's key card was still in my pocket. It worked. The door opened onto a stairwell that descended into blackness. I looked back at Darnell, barely standing. "We can't stop now." He nodded. We descended together, bleeding and half-broken, chased not just by monsters, but by the weight of everything we'd seen, and the terrible knowledge that none of it was meant to be known. The stairwell led us into a wide open space that stretched into blackness. The walls curved like a dome, and every step echoed endlessly. It felt like we had stumbled into the bowels of something alive. We were in a gymnasium, or what used to, B1. The bleachers were gone, the windows bricked up. Rusted hoops hung limply from broken backboards. Chains lay coiled on the floor like discarded snakes. Darnell collapsed beside me, groaning with every breath. Then came the sound. Deep, layered and inhuman. A voice that wasn't one voice, it was dozens, hundreds, whispering, shrieking, humming in unison. The sound made my teeth ache and the air feel heavier. We both looked up just as something massive moved in the hallway. A headless body flew through the air and smashed into the far wall, sliding down with a wet squelch. It left a trail of blood, a yard long. Then the warden stepped into view. It was nearly 10 feet tall. The uniform resembled a correctional officer's, jet black, pristine, stretched tight across a chest of bone plates and muscle cords. Its face, or whatever was left of it, was a skull wrapped in reptilian skin, bone-white with ridged horns curling back from the temples. Its eyes glowed with slitted pupils, cold and yellow. From its back, long black tendrils dragged across. The floor. One arm ended in clawed bone. The other held a staff made of spinal vertebrae, its tip glowing faintly red. Its tongue flicked from its mouth, forked and soaked in black saliva. I fired without thinking. The bullet hit its shoulder and barely slowed it. It growled. No, chanted. Some low phrase in a language that felt like it was never meant to be spoken. Then it charged. Darnell shoved me aside just in time. The warden collided with him like a battering ram. His body flew back, hitting the concrete, with a crack that silenced everything. I screamed and emptied the rest of the clip into the warden's face. One shot hit its eye. It howled, a high-pitched screech that shattered the remaining lights above. Glass rained down as the creature stumbled back, clutching its bleeding socket. I didn't hesitate. I ran forward, jumped, and shoved the barrel of Hale's pistol into the ruined eye. Then I pulled the trigger. Click, out of bullets. The warden threw me like a doll. I hit the floor and rolled, ribs screaming. It roared again, this time with rage, and began to advance. That's when I saw Darnell, crawling, broken, barely alive. He pulled the pistol from his jumpsuit, aimed with a shaking hand, and fired. The bullet tore through the warden's knee. It stumbled. I lunged, grabbing the staff it had dropped in the scuffle. The bone felt warm, alive in my hands. I drove it forward, right into the creature's chest. It screamed, every voice it had, in every pitch, filling the gymnasium with a wave of sound that made blood pour from my ears. Its body convulsed, limbs flailing, head snapping to the ceiling. Then it collapsed. Silent. I crawled to Darnell. His eyes were fluttering, and blood bubbled at the corners of his mouth. I told, "You never trust rules," he whispered, then let out a breath that never came back. I knelt there for a long time, surrounded by silence and the corpse of a godless thing that had once worn a badge. Eventually I saw a glint beneath the warden's cloak, a ring of keys. I took them, and I ran. The keys worked. The exit was tucked behind a rusted security door labeled "Release Tunnel, Authorized Personnel Only." It groaned open with a scream of metal and the scent of mildew and grave dirt. I limped through a tunnel carved in ancient stone, the walls lined with old pipes and bones too weathered to be rodents. Every step echoed like a farewell. At the end was a ladder. I climbed it one rung at a time, bleeding, shaking, not daring to hope. Then sunlight, real sunlight. I emerged through a maintenance hatch tucked beneath dead leaves in the middle of the forest. No barbed wire, no cameras, just trees and silence. The van was still there, parked at the road's edge where it had been left. The driver's corpse was gone. Drag marks in the mud suggested he hadn't walked away. The keys started the ignition. The van shuddered, coughed, and rolled forward. I drove for what felt like hours until the engine gave out in the middle of an old logging road. Smoke billowed from the hood. I climbed out and walked. Eventually I found pavement, then a mailbox, then a town. No one asked why I was bleeding. No one asked why I had prison shackles still dangling from my wrists. Maybe they saw the look in my eyes and decided they didn't want to know. I don't know how long it's been since I escaped. I don't sleep much anymore. Sometimes I hear tapping at my window at exactly 3:33 a.m. Sometimes I see people walking down the street with no faces, and sometimes when I close my eyes, I hear children laughing in the dark. They say North Frost was a private facility, an experiment. They say it was shut down, but I don't believe it. Places like that, they don't get shut down. They just move. And someday, someone else is going to wake up in a new prison with new rules and no idea how far down hell really goes. Story 2. If you visit nowhere, follow these rules or disappear forever. Welcome to nowhere. You feel it yet? That chill in your lungs that isn't just cold, it's something else. Like the air's heavier here. Like the wind knows your name. You Probably thought this was going to be some cozy winter getaway. See the northern lights, sip hot cocoa by a fire, take pretty pictures. But the moment your boots touched the snow, this place started watching you. Don't believe me? You will. Everyone does eventually. We're stuck for now. Roads iced over faster than expected. 1 minute we were rolling smooth, the next we were kissing a drift head-on. Tow truck's on its way, but around here, on its way can mean 5 minutes or 2 hours. That's just how things work in nowhere. And yeah, that's really the name of the town, Nowhere. It wasn't always called that. The old settlers had some Nordic name for it. Meant something about crossing over, about places between things. But nobody remembers the real word anymore. Names have power, you know. Maybe it was better that way. Maybe the land wanted us to forget. Now people just call it Nowhere. It fits. You won't find it on most maps. GPS tries, but it gives up halfway through the mountains. The road bends wrong. Trees press in too close. The sky turns the kind of grey that makes you wonder. If it's still day, you get the feeling that if you stopped for too long, the snow might just cover you up and no one would ever find the spot you vanished. I've lived here my whole life. My name's Alec Harlow. Local cab driver, part-time storm navigator, full-time, rumour collector. And this here's Boone, my dog. He's not much of a barker anymore, but he still knows when something isn't right. Watch him close. If he growls, you listen. Outsiders like to romanticize towns like this. Hidden gems, they call us. Quiet places where you can reconnect with nature. But the truth is, Nowhere doesn't want to be found. It lets you in only because it hasn't decided what to do with you yet. The cold here isn't just a season, it's a presence. It presses against the windows like it wants in. It whispers through the cracks in the walls. And sometimes it answers back. People survive out here by following certain rules. We don't talk about them to strangers unless we have to. But you're here now. You've already stepped past the tree line, breathed the air, heard the quiet. So you need to know, not because I think you'll believe me. Most don't. Not at first. They laugh, take their selfies, buy their souvenirs, and vanish into the snow like breath on glass. But belief doesn't matter here, obedience does. There are rules, 3 of them. And if you break even one, well, let's just say the cold won't be the only thing you need to worry about. Every year when the nights grow longest and the cold digs in like teeth, Nowhere comes alive. They call it the Northern Lights Festival. And on the surface it looks like something out of a postcard. Lanterns strung across snowy streets, old wooden stalls creaking under the weight of steaming cider and hand-carved charms. Kids bundled up like walking blankets tossing snowballs under flickering lamps. From the outside, it's magic. Pure, quiet northern magic. But anyone who's lived here long enough knows that the festival isn't just celebration, it's camouflage. See the lights in the sky, they don't just happen. They come with something. Some say the auroras are a veil being pulled back. Others think they're a signal, an ancient call echoing from the deep black beyond the stars. All I know is, when the sky dances green and violet above us, this town holds its breath. My grandfather, Walter Harlow, I used to say the lights were the road between worlds. He believed the aurora was a bridge, and when it opened up, souls walked across. Not all at once, not in a flood, but just enough to slip through. He said some were ready to move on. Others weren't. He'd take me ice fishing out on the lake. During the festival, miles from the noise, just the 2 of us under that glowing sky. I remember the way he'd stare up at the lights, not with joy, but with reverence, like they were watching back, like they were choosing who to take. You, die under the lights, he said once. You'll be carried somewhere clean, no getting lost. I didn't understand what he meant until years later after he died. The festival crowd doesn't notice. They never do. They stare up with wide eyes, mouths open, faces painted in green and gold. It's beautiful, No question. Breathtaking even. But that's how it starts, beauty disarming you, making you think there's nothing underneath. But there is. Every festival something slips loose. Just one or two, sometimes more. Spirits, yes, but not the kind that wear white sheets and rattle chains. These things don't announce themselves. They watch, they follow. And if they see someone staring too long, someone who looks a little too lost, they might decide to tag along when the lights fade. You won't know right away. That's the trick. They don't slam doors or whisper your name in the dark. Not at first. First they settle like dust, like mold in the corners of your mind. It's happened before. A couple years back, a woman from out of town, tourist, camera around her neck, boots too clean, rented a room after the festival. She said she felt tired, just tired. That's always how it begins. By the end of the week, she hadn't left the room. The innkeeper knocked and heard her laughing, but when he opened the door, she was just sitting there staring at the corner. Her eyes were wide, her mouth was moving, but no sound came out, and it smelled like something had died in the walls. She left the next morning, never said goodbye, left all her things behind. Some of us still see her sometimes, not the real her, the version that came back. It always starts with the lights. They make you feel small, make you feel like you're standing on the edge of something enormous and ancient. And you just don't realize what's staring back. Here's the first rule, the one every local follows without thinking. The one that seems like nothing until it isn't. Before you enter anywhere in nowhere, you knock, and you say, "Person here." That's it. Just 3 words. Simple. Soft. Like a courtesy. But it's not. You'll see it all over town if you pay attention. A fisherman returning from the docks will rap twice on the bait shop's door before stepping inside. Kids visiting friends will tap their knuckles against the porch post and whisper the phrase like it's a password. Even at the diner. Doesn't matter if the place is open and filled with people. The locals still knock before walking through the door. I do it too. Every time. Not because I think about it. It's muscle memory. Like breathing. Like brushing snow off your boots. I grew up doing it. My mother did it. My grandfather. God, he was strict about it. You knock, you speak, you wait half a second, then you enter. That's just how it's done. Tourists think it's charming. Oh, small-town customs, how quaint. They mimic us, tap on doors, and laugh, say the phrase in a sing-song voice like they're playing pretend. It's always funny, until someone forgets. Because this rule, this isn't just folklore. It isn't nostalgia. It's a shield. My grandfather used to tell me stories late at night when the wind howled so hard it shook the windows. He'd sit beside the fire, his voice low, like even speaking about it too loud might draw something near. He said the rule started long before the town had streets or buildings, back when people lived in cabins miles apart and snow piled so high you couldn't see your roof from the road. There was something in the woods back then. Still is. Not. Monsters, exactly. Not in the way you think. No claws or fangs or glowing red eyes. No. These were things. Watchers. Mimics. They'd take your shape, your walk, your smile. They'd wear your face like a coat, but they couldn't speak the truth. That was the catch. That was the rule. They could murmur. They could hum. They could even copy your voice if they heard enough of it, but they couldn't speak a truth they didn't own. Not completely. And they couldn't say those 3 words. Person here, it's not just a phrase, it's a line in the snow, a test. One they can't pass. See, back in the early days, when a man came knocking on your door in a storm, you had 2 options. Let him in or let him freeze. And in a place like nowhere, freezing is a death sentence. But how could you be sure the man on the other side was human? So they started knocking, started speaking. And if you heard those words, if you heard person here spoken clear and calm, you knew. You opened the door, and if you didn't, You didn't. There's a story about that. Not one we tell often, but you've come this far. There was a woman named Marla Stokes lived just past the Eastern Ridge. Tough old soul. Her husband died in a logging accident, and she raised their 2 sons alone, chopping her own firewood and setting her own snares. People respected her, some feared her. One night during the festival, while most folks were in town watching the sky, Marla stayed home. Said she didn't trust crowds. Snow had come heavy that day, blinding flurries. That fell fast and quiet. Sometime after midnight, her youngest boy, Jeremy, came to the door. Knocked once, didn't say a word. Marla thought he was playing around. Kids did that sometimes, forgetting the rule, testing boundaries. So she opened the door. Jeremy stood there, coat dusted with snow, face pale and stiff. He didn't smile. Just stepped inside and walked to the hearth like he belonged there. But her real son, her living son, was already asleep in his bed upstairs. What happened after is unclear. Some say she screamed. Some say she begged. The neighbors found the house the next morning, door wide open, snow blown inside. The hearth was cold. One bed was empty, the other held Jeremy, curled up and unharmed. Marla was never found. Her coat still hung on the peg. By the door, the kettle still steamed faintly on the stove. But she was gone, not a drop of blood, not a scuffle, just vanished. Folks said she let something in that night, something that wanted to wear her face. Since then, no one forgets the knock. Not here, not if they value their skin. Even kids learn it before they learn how to write. The old folks say the phrase before entering their own homes, just in case. I know what you're thinking. Why would something go through all that trouble just to get inside? Because once it's in, it doesn't leave. It doesn't destroy. It replaces, slowly, quietly, until no one remembers there was anything different. That's why we knock. That's why we say the words. You don't need to believe in monsters. You don't need to believe in ghosts. But if you're staying here, really staying, you'll learn that belief doesn't keep you safe. Obedience does. So remember the first rule. Knock. Say the words. Don't wait for an answer. And if you ever hear someone knocking, but they don't say anything, don't open the door. Rule 2 is harder to explain. It's not about what you do, it's about what you don't. And the moment you ignore that, the moment you pick one up, you've already invited it in. I'm talking about the coins. They show up all over town. Big, fake-looking things the size of silver dollars. Bright gold plating like they were minted last night. On one side they've got the words Wonder World Ltd stamped in clean block letters. On the other, a Ferris wheel? Sounds harmless, right? The problem is, nowhere's never had a Wonder World. No carnival. No traveling circus, no theme park, not now, not ever. You ask around and you'll get the same answer. Closest amusement park is 3 mountain passes and 6 hours of winter roads away. And yet these coins keep appearing. On sidewalks, behind dumpsters, tucked into coat pockets no one's worn in years. And they're always too clean. No scratches, no dirt, no rust. Like they're placed, not lost. Everyone in town knows. You see one, you don't touch it. But not everyone listens. There was a man once. Name was Calvin Bishop. Ran the hardware shop on Main. Nice guy by all accounts. Kept to himself, paid fair wages, handed out cider in paper cups every winter. But Calvin had a weakness. He liked collecting things. Old newspaper clippings, matchbooks from closed-down motels, expired coupons from grocery stores that didn't exist anymore. Said he liked the feeling of lost time. He kept shelves full of weird odds and ends, like his life was one long scavenger hunt. So when Calvin found a Wonderworld coin one morning stuck to his front window, he didn't hesitate. He pried it loose with a screwdriver and dropped it into a glass jar. Next day, there were 2 coins, one in his mailbox, one on the bathroom sink of his store. He grinned like a kid, thought it was some kind of trick, a game. By the end of the week, his back room was filled with them, Dozens. Stacked in old lunchboxes, tea tins, empty paint cans. Customers stopped coming in, not because of the coins, but because Calvin stopped opening the shop. He kept the door locked. Curtains drawn. Then the noise started. Neighbors said they heard music playing at night. Carousel music, soft and distant, like it was coming from underground. Others heard laughter, not joyful, not quite human. Something about the pitch made their teeth itch. That's when folks started to worry. Sheriff Harrow went to check on him, found the door unlocked, the bell above the frame missing. Inside it was freezing, windows frosted from the inside out, breath hanging in the air like fog. And the coins? They were gone. Not a single one left, just a trail of wet footprints leading down into the basement. They never found Calvin. The only thing left in that house was a single coin sitting upright on a wooden stool, as if it had been placed there waiting to be noticed. Sheriff Harrow didn't touch it. Smart man. He backed out, locked the door, and the place has been empty ever since. Now and then we still see him, or what used to be him. They say Calvin walks the woods when the moon is high. His face stretched wrong, skin paper thin, hands dragging through the snow like he's searching for something he dropped. Sometimes he hums, sometimes you hear the music, and sometimes he's not alone, because once you keep a coin, you're not just collecting metal, you're making a deal, but not one you understand, not one you choose. These coins, they're bait, and if you take one, you invite whatever's behind them to come a little closer, a little deeper, until something starts watching through your eyes. I knew someone else who made that mistake. Her name was Irene Calloway, a teacher at the little schoolhouse before it burned down. She was smart, skeptical, thought all the town's rules were just superstition wrapped in snow and fear. One day she found a coin pressed between the pages of her lesson planner, like someone had slipped it there on purpose. She kept it on her desk, called it her lucky token. Within a week she stopped showing up to class, started sleeping in the broom closet at the school, muttering about music no one else could hear. Claimed the children's drawings were changing when she turned her back. Smiling suns turning into black spirals, stick figures sprouting too many limbs. They found her collapsed in the hallway, clutching a notebook filled with circles. Overlapping. Endless circles. She couldn't speak, couldn't blink, she just stared. When the paramedics tried to move her, she screamed like her skin had caught fire. The coin was gone. Only thing left on her desk was a slip of paper. One word. Ride. We don't know what the coins are, or where they come from. But they don't follow the same rules as the other things in Nowhere. They're not part of the town, not part of the forest or the snow. They come from somewhere else, and they don't like being thrown away. You toss one into the lake, it'll show up in your glove compartment. Leave one at a bus stop, it'll be sitting on your pillow the next night. They follow, and the longer you keep them, the more you change. First in small ways, trouble sleeping, shadows that move wrong, reflections that hold still after you walk away. Then come the dreams, then the music, then the thing that wants you to ride. What that means, I don't want to know, but here's what I do know. The second rule in Nowhere is this: leave the coins alone. Don't take them. Don't pocket them. Don't think they're funny or rare or collectible. They're not, they're a hook, and you are the bait. The third rule is the one people forget the most, because by the time it matters, they're tired. Their feet hurt, their camera batteries are dead, and their skin's still tingling from the cold. They've just spent the night watching the sky burn in silence, and their heads are full of beauty, not danger, but that's exactly when it happens, when your guard drops. When your awe turns soft. When you start thinking nothing bad can happen under a sky like that, that's the moment it finds you. So listen close. Never go straight home after the festival. I know how it sounds. Silly. Like a bedtime superstition. Or some old wives' tale. Don't walk under a ladder. Don't break a mirror. Don't go home right after the auroras, but in nowhere we call it shaking off the spirits. And we've been doing it for generations. You see, the old stories don't just say the auroras are lights. They say they're highways. Highways for the dead. Every time the sky ripples with green and gold, something opens, something shifts, and most of the time the souls pass through. Quiet, unseen, most of the time. But not always. Sometimes one of them doesn't leave. Maybe it sees someone it used to know. Maybe it hears a laugh it remembers. Maybe it's confused or angry or simply too full of longing to move on. Or maybe it's not a soul at all. Maybe it's something else entirely. Something that slips through the cracks just because they're there. Whatever it is, once it finds you, it clings, follows. And if you walk straight home, if you close the door behind you and climb into bed, without stopping anywhere else, you trap it inside. It starts small, a cold draft that moves against the wind. The feeling that your room is just slightly too dark, that the walls are watching, that someone's behind you but never when you turn around. You wake up more tired than you were the night before. Blankets soaked in sweat, dreams gone the second. Your eyes open, but something lingers. You stop checking your phone, you stop turning on the lights, and then comes the mold. Always the mold. It creeps like ivy, around door frames, under the sink, in corners where there shouldn't be moisture. It's dark, blackish green, sometimes grey, and it smells like rot and old snow. You scrub it away, bleach it, paint over it, but it always comes back. That's when the house starts to feel like a trap. You hear things, soft footfalls upstairs, water dripping from pipes that don't exist, a faint humming from the walls. One family said they heard their dead daughter's lullaby playing on a loop from the attic, even though the attic had been sealed for 20 years. And you feel it too, a weight, a pressure, like the house is sinking into the earth and it's pulling you down with it. There was a man named Roland Marr, retired geologist, lived out on Ridgemore Lane, kept to himself, real quiet, used to volunteer at the library. One winter after the festival, he went home without stopping. His mistake. Neighbors said his curtains stayed drawn for weeks. Mail piled up. No footprints in the snow. When the sheriff went to check, he found Roland sitting upright in an armchair, eyes wide, head tilted slightly like he was listening to something. His mouth was sewn shut, not with thread, not with wire, with ice. Thin, delicate strands of frozen saliva stretching between his lips like cobwebs spun by frost. His tongue was missing, but there was no blood, none at all. Just one thing written in condensation on the inside of the window. Stayed too warm. I've seen other cases too. A couple who didn't stop after the festival. Both ended up in the hospital, emaciated, barely conscious. The husband kept repeating the same phrase, "The lights don't leave," over and over, like it was a prayer. The wife didn't speak, at all. She just stared at the ceiling, smiling. A week later, they both vanished. Beds empty, no struggle, just one set of wet footprints leading out into the snow. That's why we follow the rule. After the lights, you don't go home. Not right away. You go somewhere public, a coffee shop, a bar. Even a roadside cocoa stand will do. You let the night settle. You breathe. You listen to other voices, human voices. You let it lose interest. Because whatever follows you from the auroras, it doesn't want attention, it wants to slip in unnoticed, to get comfortable, to root itself in silence and warmth and stillness. But if you break that silence, if you flood it with voices and lights and clinking mugs and the smell of cinnamon and burnt coffee, sometimes that's enough to drive it away. Not always, but most of the time. Some people say it's a superstition. I say, who cares? It's a cheap insurance policy. 1 hour of sitting in a diner, 1 thermos of hot cocoa, 1 bag of stale popcorn from a corner store. That's all it takes. That's the cost. Compared to what might be waiting behind your front door, that's nothing. And if you're thinking this sounds like overkill, like fear talking, then maybe it is. Maybe we've lived in the cold too long. Maybe the snow got inside our heads. But there's a reason the town still stands. It's not luck, it's the rules. So this year, when the festival ends and your breath hangs in the air and your heart still beating fast from the beauty of it, don't go home, find somewhere bright, somewhere loud, somewhere filled with life. Let your feet thaw. Let your blood stir. Let your shadow catch its breath and wander off on its own. Because if you don't, then when you open your door, you might not be alone. You've been listening for a while now, that's good. Means you're smarter than most, or at least more cautious. Around here, that's what keeps you alive. The snow's let up. Roads are clearer now. I can see the tow truck pulling up through. The side mirror. Lights bouncing off the drift banks like ghosts blinking awake. But before you go, before you load up your bags and head to that cozy little lodge you booked with its crackling fireplace and vintage decor, let's go over it one more time just to be safe. Rule 1. Knock and say "person here" before you enter anywhere. Doesn't matter if it's a shop, a bar, or your best friend's kitchen. Doesn't matter if the lights are on and you can see people moving inside. You knock. You say the words out loud. Clearly, because if something's waiting on the other side, something wearing a face you trust, it might not be able to lie, but it can open the door. You can't give it that chance. Rule 2. Leave the Wonderworld coins alone. You'll see them. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but at some point during your stay, one of them will find you. It'll show up like a forgotten token. On a windowsill, in your coat pocket, under your pillow. Don't touch it. Don't keep it, just in case. Don't convince yourself you're different. That's how it starts. That's how they get in. Rule 3. After the festival, don't go straight home. I don't care how cold it is, how tired you are, or how far you've walked. You stop somewhere, anywhere. Buy tea you won't drink. Talk to someone you'll never see again. Just be around life. Give whatever's attached to you a chance to wander off. Let it forget your scent. And if you feel something watching as you walk, if you feel eyes behind your back, or a shadow that doesn't match your body, walk a little slower. Let it pass you. And whatever you do, don't speak to it. That's it. That's all there is. Simple rules, right? That's what makes them dangerous. They're too easy to forget, too easy to break. The ones who ignore them always think the same thing. This can't be real. It's just stories, just folklore. And then, by the time they realize the stories are instructions, it's too late. They vanish, and if they don't, something comes back in their place. I've lived in nowhere my whole life. 31 winters. I've followed the rules every time. I've seen what happens when others don't. I've heard the knocking that comes too late at night. I've watched the coins crawl their way back to doorsteps like lost dogs, and I've heard the breathing. Not mine, not Boone's, something in the walls, slow, wet, familiar. So when I say these rules matter, I don't mean they'll make your trip easier. I mean they'll let you leave, because this town may look quaint, pretty, even, but it's not a place that forgets. The woods don't forget. The wind doesn't forget, and the snow, it remembers every step you take. You're not from here, you're just passing through, and that's fine. We like it that way. The lights will thrill you. The stories will spook you. You'll go home and tell your friends what a strange little town you found in the mountains. But if you bring something back, if something follows, don't say I didn't warn you. Now come on. Looks like the truck's ready. I'll help you with your things. The lodge isn't far, and the sky's already starting to shift. You've got a long night ahead, and the northern lights, they're waiting. Thank you for venturing into the darkness with us. If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't keep the fear to yourself. Leave a comment, smash that like button, and share this video with someone who dares to listen in the dark. We release terrifying true stories every week, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's lurking in the shadows. This is High Scare Stories, where nightmares don't end when the video does. Until next time, stay safe and stay scared.